Hey, Moonlovers. Welcome to another episode of Lunar Wisdom for Everyday Life. I'm Kelly Jones, and I am recording this just before I'm about to leave to go and do a beautiful new moon ceremony and sound healing at a ladies' day retreat called the Radiant Womb Retreat. So that is, I have literally got to leave when I finish this podcast. And because, as previously mentioned, Mercury is now definitely retrograde, had a little bit of problem getting online and getting onto the Spotify site. But I am here and we are recording, and let's see how it goes. And once again, I sat down and thought, what am I going to talk about? So I have just pulled an oracle card from the Oracle of the Seven Energies cards by Colette Baron Reed. And as always, if you are watching me on my YouTube channel, which I will get the videos put up, I have found out that I definitely need to get a faster broadband. So that's actually nothing to do with Mercury. It is literally to do with my broadband speed, because we managed to get a video up in 26 minutes instead of 26 hours at my friend's house. So at least we know that that is an actual thing. And, we can sometimes put it down to the astrology, but sometimes it is just an actual thing. So the card that has come out is this amazing card. If you're listening to me on my podcast, and you're not going to be able to see this, but it's an amazing card with the third eye open, sparkles everywhere. And the card is Seeing Beyond. And when I was thinking about what I was going to talk about today, because I've talked about the eclipses and the astrological aspects that we have got coming up, which are huge. But I was listening to some stuff on YouTube, and a channel came up that I hadn't listened to before. I'm not going to mention who they are, but I won't be listening again. But it was two ladies talking about this upcoming eclipse in America. And yes, this total eclipse of the sun, so where the world goes dark for a couple of minutes, which in ancient times, as you can imagine, when they didn't know what that was quite a scary thing. The North Node is known as the head of the dragon. So it was seen that the dragon was literally eating the sun. And it can be quite, a scary phenomenon if you don't know what it is. But we do know what it is. But this podcast I listened to for a short time, they were really scaremongering. It was real propaganda and, telling people that it was dangerous and accidents are likely to happen and your money's likely to disappear out of your bank account and all stuff like this. And I thought, do you know what? I need to come online and do a bit of reassurance. So my belief is, seeing beyond what may be presented to us and not just being literal about these things. So one, remember, we do have our own personal birth charts. Every single one of us have a unique birth chart, and where the planets are situated at the time that we were born will make a difference to how we experience these different energies. But remembering that, astrology is something to explain the natural cycles of what is happening and the influences that they can have and where they can highlight things in our lives individually and collectively. So I just want to reassure you that once you become aware, remember that you do have free will in how you perceive and what you expect and what you believe about what could occur from this. But everything is evolutionary. It is for our own good somehow. And as we know, sometimes crappy things happen, which when we look back with the benefit of hindsight, we know that in some way it helped us to change something in our lives for the better, even if that started off with dreadful challenges, myself included in that. And in previous episodes, and I'm sure in future episodes, I will be telling you some of those stories to help us all see much more clearly why certain things can happen, and it's what we do with them and how we perceive it and how we respond to it. So my belief is with this eclipse that it's a new moon. So let's remember that. And on a new moon, we write down our wishes and our intentions for ourselves. It's a time to sow seeds. This is a new moon in Aries, which is the beginning of the zodiac year. Aries is all about action, getting things started, and looking at things with new eyes. And as we know, we have Mercury retrograde right now, which can slow down any action that we wish to take. But it is a time to reflect, reevaluate, review, revise. So currently, I am at the end of my first year of my professional astrology certification. So my exam paper has arrived. So I'm going to use this whole month of April to revise. And it's also a time at a new moon to rest. We're in the dark moon phase at the moment when the new moon actually arrives on Monday. When you start to see the moon again, that is the time when we can start to think about taking action. But up until then, my recommendation is that you take it easy, you go inwards, sit, be quiet, stop and notice how you feel. Notice your breath coming in and going out. And remember that there are things that we just don't have to do anything about because they just happen all by themselves. Our hearts beating, our breath coming in and out, our hair and our nails and things growing, our skin renewing. And yes, talking of skin, again, if you're looking at me on YouTube, my skin is glowing at the moment because I've been experimenting with the miracles of castor oil. And I really am noticing that it is making a difference to my skin. It's looking much more glowing and plump. So yeah, go look that up yourself and do some research on castor oil. But yes, I digress. So it is new moon time. Dark moon time is a time to retreat, go inwards, rest, stop and notice. And I think when this eclipse is actually happening, maybe stop, sit down, take some quiet time. Not a time to have a party and a celebration, I don't think. But maybe a time to just sit and think about what you don't want to take forwards with you, what you can renew, reevaluating how you're responding to things, and becoming aware maybe of your own birth chart. Knowing your rising sign is really useful with all the moon phases to know which house area it might be affecting you. And as I have previously talked about, I'm a Sagittarius rising. So this new moon eclipse in Aries is going to be showing itself in the fifth house. The fifth house is to do with romance. It's to do with pregnancy and creativity, creating new life. Two things. It is also to do with pleasure and sex. So I have, had a joke with my partner that maybe this eclipse, because he's a Sagittarius rising as well, so it's affecting us both in our fifth house. So maybe we're going to have some renewed pleasure in our sex life, and maybe we might become more romantic with each other. So, you know, um, that's a nice light-hearted way to look at it. But it could bring changes. And other things that we have got going on around this eclipse time will obviously have an effect as well, which I will talk about in a little while. But I just wanted to read out to you. Okay, so my camera just went off, so I'm now starting recording again. Can you believe it? But yeah, here we go. So it's not going to let me record, so I'm just going to continue recording my voice, and it looks like my camera doesn't want to film me anymore. So these are the funny things that can happen. See, look, literally, as I'm recording this, Mercury is being a trickster and telling me that my storage is full. And we've just gone past 11 minutes and 11 seconds, so we'll take that as a good sign. So I'm going to read out to you this Seeing Beyond card and what it has to say, because I feel like there is a message in here for maybe some of us or all of us. So the key concepts of this card is vision, the capacity to imagine something, to look beyond the material, beyond the obvious, the realm of the transpersonal, options and possibilities, getting out of your own way and discarding your projected outcomes. Do you consider things only within the framework of what you already know? So I know that one of the things that brings most of us the greatest fear is the unknown, but we really are collectively stepping into an unknown era. We are moving into this age of Aquarius. We have been in the age of Pisces for the past couple of thousand years, and we are now stepping into this age of Aquarius, into the unknown. So can we allow ourselves to see beyond into the vastness of potential? You know, we are all gifted with the magical ability of imagination. And when we open to it, we become a conduit for a vision greater than our own. So, after quite a few years of only really reading books on self-development and, non-fiction books about learning stuff, I decided about 2 years ago to start going back to fiction, because I realized that my great imagination that I have was kind of, out of practice. So reading fiction for me has been a way to open up my imagination again, to allow my mind to wander and to create things that only my mind can see, which then, I can then put out into my field of potential and possibility, seeing beyond what is shown to us. So I stopped watching TV 10 years ago. I stopped listening to the news and reading newspapers. And I even stopped listening to mainstream radio stations. And most of the time now, what I do is listen to what I would like to listen to. And if it starts to go somewhere that is going to maybe fill me with fear and dread, then I switch it off and decide for myself how I want to maybe see the world. And that doesn't mean I'm ignorant to what's going on in the world. It just means that I would like to make a difference to the world by not being programmed to be in fear and dread all the time. And so when I listened to that podcast today, and they were really creating fear and panic and dread around this eclipse, I decided that it was a really good idea to come on and, tell you some of the better things. So, yes, there are some really big astrological aspects to this moon that we've got coming up. And, we are in it now. We are feeling it now. I'm sure those of you who are sensitive to this, and if you're listening to this, you're likely to be into this stuff anyway, are probably already experiencing some of the effects. And yes, the upcoming big conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus, which I believe the last time they were conjunct was 14 years ago. Jupiter expands whatever it is nearby, and Uranus is a planet of sudden shocks and revolution and change. It really is the unknown. It's a wild card. Anything could happen. But also Uranus can create and cause earthquakes to happen. And we have seen that just recently. There has been a big earthquake and a tsunami in Japan. But these things have happened throughout history. The history of the earth, the history of astrology, whichever way you want to look at it, these things are always happening. And sometimes they're big and sometimes they're small, sometimes they don't happen, but they are always creating change and evolution. And I believe that these big things that happen are there to bring us together. We come together in times of challenge. We open our hearts up. It's not a time to shut down. It's a time to open up. Other things that are going on during this moon. So as I've said, we know about Mercury retrograde. We won't give him any more airtime. But we also, on the 10th of April, we've got Mars crossing and going past Saturn. And Saturn is residing in Pisces at the moment, slowly making his way through that beautiful, compassionate, spiritual sign of Pisces, the more fluid sign. And Saturn is very much about, discipline and getting your stuff together in order, creating order and commitment. So commitment to a more spiritual practice might well have come up for people. Mars and Saturn coming together is always, again, like, it's got a history of a doom and gloom around it. But again, it's how we perceive it and use that energy for ourselves. Mars and Saturn together brings our attention to how we relate to insecurities and fears that may hold us back from asserting ourselves and our desires and taking action and going after what we want. Mars Saturn has to do with maturity. So a mature use of our will, of our discipline, of our effort, a mature use of perseverance to get through struggle. So a maturity in the use of force and energy if someone is trying to block you or limit you. And we know that in the grand scheme of things, that's always the bigger powers that be, always trying to keep us small and limit us and block us. So maybe we can use this eclipse energy and this Mars-Saturn conjunction to install a more mature, grown-up, more disciplined, committed effort to get past our insecurities and fears that are limiting us. It's kind of like, the combination of those two planets together is a bit like martial arts. It's discipline-wise, it's very strong. Just coming back to Mercury for a moment, as he's stationed there, the sun is going to be going past. So it's what we would call a cazimi. So it's like a rebirth and reinvigoration of Mercury. And he'll start to rise like a morning star. So there is a rebirth process, and that happens around the 11th of April, just after this eclipse. And then Mercury will come together with Chiron. And Chiron is a wounded healer, and Chiron is in an exact conjunction, is in an exact alignment with this new moon. So remember, on a new moon, the moon and the sun are aligned, and the moon is going to block out the sun for a moment. The sun represents our ego. The sun represents the king, the power, the outside conscious world, and the moon represents our inner world. The queen, our sort of inner subconscious, and it also, the moon represents the people in history, and the sun represents the royalty. So if we look at that as being blocked out, so for a moment it's going to go dark. So everything signifies that we need to go inwards and have a mature sit with ourselves to see how we can go forwards when everything starts to move again, when everything is rebirthed and renewed. Chiron is the wounded healer. I have Chiron in Aries, so very much so for myself and anybody else who has Chiron in Aries of my age group, anyone who's born around the early 70s, you would have Chiron in Aries too. And Aries is to do with I am. It's to do with what about me, the me in the situation. You know, where do we not put ourselves first? Where is our self-love for ourselves been wounded, and how can we heal that? What else do we need to do to address that, to not be victims of these things, but to step into our own personal sovereign power and step up into these energies that are there to help us, not to hinder us, but to highlight and illuminate things for us. We also have lovely coming up. We'll have Mercury conjoining with Venus, and that's an exciting, lovely energy. So that happens just before the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, which is already happening, really. Jupiter and Uranus are so close together that we'd already be experiencing, some breakthroughs about what we've been talking about. The good news is the second half of the month promises to be much more uplifting once we've got past all of these big things that are happening. Mercury goes direct at the end of the month. The planets of relationships, Venus and Mars, are going to be moving into their signs where they are happy to be. The last week of April is looking really good, and that's great because I'm going to be on holiday in Italy. So, Jupiter is a benefic planet, bringing opportunity for growth and expansion. Uranus is the planet of progress and surprises, and that's all happening in Taurus, which is representative of the Earth. So all in all, looking at all these things and seeing beyond the difficult moment where it feels intense, and is just to sit down, be quiet, stop and notice yourself. Breathe, notice your breath coming in, going out. Simply notice how you feel. Write down, get your journal out. Ask yourself, what do I need to be more mature around? As we harness this transformative power, we are being called to embrace the spirit of adventure, our inner warrior, the journey of self-discovery and self-realization. So just reflecting on the areas of your life where you're ready for a fresh start. So fresh starts for me at the moment, as I've mentioned before, as the eclipse is happening, I'm going to be on my way to starting teaching my first Pilates class in 5 years. And I'm quite excited about what that will bring personally for my own body. My body's going to really enjoy that. And, to meet some new people, to start something new again, to rebirth something that, ultimately I've been limiting myself from doing something that I'm really great at. I wrote a story around it that limited me, but now I'm ready to step into those things that I'm really great at and see where it leads me. I've also got one more self-love club this month before I go on holiday. So that's next Friday. And we'll also be doing a festival over in Ely called Green Acres Festival, where we'll be doing some sound healing. That's the weekend of the 20th, 21st. If you fancy coming to meet us and having some sound healing and doing some really Taurus, earthy things. So, that's all I've got coming up. And I'll try and get one more podcast in before I go away. Apologies if there's a couple of weeks where I'm not around, but I will try and pre-record, if technology and time allows. So I wish you a really great eclipse, a new moon blessings. I hope that you can find some time to sit and go within and to reflect. And I will see you all on the other side.